had cases where a parent, where you're telling a person, look, this is not worth the legal fees to fight over this particular thing. But then you have a parent who's willing to fund it. And they will say, we want to send a message. We want to fight. And so that's sort of an odd thing. But people come in, and I think people are mostly just afraid. They don't know what their future is going to be.
Welcome to the Verdict Signal podcast, where we feature how top attorneys help people make informed choices, avoid common mistakes, and move forward with confidence. Now, enjoy the show, and here's your host.
Daniel Gao here. I'm the host of Verdict Signal, and today we're expanding our conversations to the expert to protect what people build, their careers, families, and businesses. I have Susan Mermin, who brings a unique combination of legal, mediation, and therapeutic experience to family dispute resolution. A family law attorney since 1986 and founder of her media-based practice in 1996, she has extensive experience handling divorce, custody, support, and complex family matters through both mediation and litigation, including pet custody disputes. Her background as a therapist, combined with specialized training in divorce mediation and parenting coordination, allows her to address the emotional and practical challenges families face during transition. Susan is a court-approved parenting coordinator, a respected member of the legal and mediation communities, and serves clients through the Media and Chester County offices of the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. So Susan, welcome and glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's start from the very beginning, Susan. What first got you interested in the legal field?
Well, frankly, it was a matter of I saw that I was a therapist for 12 years. And I worked for the state of Pennsylvania, and I realized that therapy was not going to be the wave of the future, at least in terms of keeping employment with the state. They were shutting down the state hospitals. I loved what I did, and I figured that I really needed to pursue something else for the future. And I thought that practicing law would be able to combine with my therapy background, and maybe I could help people outside of the mental health community.
Okay. And so when you made that transition, why family law? Was it because you had that therapy background?
Well, it wasn't necessarily so much my choice as anywhere. Whenever I started out working with people, once they found out that I had worked in therapy, they said, well, you need to do the family law because A, we all hate it, and B, that it really involves a lot of coaching people through difficult times. And even in the best of divorces, people have trouble dealing with it. It makes them, it's not something they wanted, and they're stuck in this situation, and it's emotionally difficult for them. And so it was really a matter of being steered into there by other attorneys who just hated dealing with divorces and family law.
Okay. And I guess what's one thing that you wish more people understood about working with an attorney such as yourself?
Well, I think the key is to be open to solutions that people, they come in and sometimes they have an idea and they heard, well, my friend got this or my sister or brother got that, and this is how it went. And they really have to look at the big picture and how to move their life forward. They don't have to be stuck in that moment of anger or despair, but looking for solutions, looking to work with somebody who can help them through a difficult time. There are people who want to go in and immediately start fighting, and they want an attorney who's going to be a killer. And that's not necessarily in their best interest.
I see. Now, when it comes to the mediation versus the litigation part of it, I mean, I talked a lot about mediation in your introduction, but then there's also the part where sometimes you have to litigate. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Like, when do you try and mediate? When do you try and litigate? What's, I guess, the main differences for people to understand?
Well, I guess the first approach that I take is to try to see if it's a possibility of anybody reaching a settlement. Settlement could involve attorneys dealing with other attorneys to try to settle the case. Generally, whenever a case comes in, for the most part, you kind of know where it's going to end up. I mean, if you were to litigate it, you sort of know what the end result is going to be. And so that's really the first approach. However, there are times when people come in, if there's an abuse situation, if somebody's been abusive, chances are you're going to have a really tough time settling that. And you need to start looking at really protecting your client's interests, possibly going through the court system. When there are really disputed child custody cases where you feel that a child is not going to do well with the other parent, most times the kids can adapt and do well with both parents. But if it's, again, a matter of abuse, uh, a matter of somebody moving far away, sometimes you just have to litigate that. And the worst is whenever you have people come in and they don't really know what the assets are or the liabilities, and you find out that the other side is hiding things. So whenever it's a matter of somebody hiding that they have accounts or hiding the value of their business, then you're sort of left in a position, again, where you have to go in and be aggressive in terms of getting that information. It comes down to whether you can best protect your client through settlement, mediation, or litigation. And the key is always protecting your client.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when it comes to mediation, is that typically the route that you'd advise, kind of off top of your head, for most people to go down? Or is it some situations where it's like, okay, mediation is just, I don't recommend it? And you mentioned, like, for abuse cases, it's probably not going to work. But are there any other situations where it's like, hey, mediation is not a good option?
Well, simply if the other side doesn't want to mediate. I mean, that's really, it takes two people to want to mediate. Mediation involves the attorney, which would be me in that case, acting as a neutral party. I'm going in, not taking either side. And that doesn't necessarily work for some people. I mean, most of my clients who come in, they want me to represent them against the other person. Now, it can be done in a cooperative manner, but both parties have attorneys that are representing their interest. So mediation is when you pretty clearly have two people who want to make it work as easily as possible. They're sort of on the same page. They know where they want to head. And that doesn't, that's something where you can act as a neutral party and just sort of sort out what the assets are, what the liabilities are, what the finances are in terms of support, and what's best for the children. So it's not everybody is suitable for mediation. Most people are suitable for reaching a settlement, working with another attorney, with both people being represented. So it really depends on the dynamics of the family, of the people that are involved. So I do a lot of settlements as well as a lot of mediation. I try to keep people out of court as much as possible because court is very emotionally taxing, very expensive. I mean, once you get into litigation, you're talking about a lot of money in attorney's fees and preparation, and maybe having experts to examine the finances and experts in terms of evaluating what's best for the children. So I try to encourage people to see if even if they can't mediate, if both parties have decent attorneys, there's a good chance you can come to a settlement. Most attorneys know when you're going into court how you think the judges are going to decide, and you're spending a lot of your client's money and preparation time when you sort of know the outcome to begin with. And sometimes when people ask me how difficult it's going to be, say, tell me who the attorney is on the other side. Some attorneys want to litigate everything. Some attorneys are very open and known for wanting to settle their cases. So there's a lot of different dynamics going on. The family dynamics, the individual dynamics, and the dynamics of who the attorneys are.
Interesting. So whether you do mediation or settle or litigation, is it largely at the end of the day, largely kind of split almost evenly between the two parties, or are there some situations where it's just overwhelmingly going to be in one party or another?
Well, that pretty much depends. Generally, you can go in kind of with an idea of a starting point of 50-50, but there are other factors to consider. Has somebody been a stay-at-home parent and they haven't worked in 20 or 30 years? Then that might tip the scale a little bit more in their favor, and you're also looking at possibly longer term alimony at that point. Sometimes people will trade off more of the assets in exchange for giving up alimony.
Mhm.
And people may give up more of the assets because they don't want to pay alimony long term.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Interesting.
it really has to be individualized. I can't tell you that any particular case, until you meet the clients, until you know who the attorney is. But generally, you can kind of go in assuming it's basically going to be 50-50, but it isn't necessarily always so.
Mm.
If somebody has a business and they want to hold on to their business, you might get more out of some other assets. Um, it's I know in the past a lot of people who had pensions were willing to give up. Let's say, I will give you the house and let me keep my pension,
Mm.
which can work out fine, except then sometimes afterwards you find out that their pension plan went bankrupt.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly like if they worked for like an airline like
Mm.
US Air, and they
Mm.
went they went out of business basically, and the
Mhm.
pensions wind up being taken over by the government. And so they're not exactly getting the bargain that they had thought they were getting.
Interesting. Okay. Now, when it comes to custody, you also handle pet custody as well, which is very interesting because I guess it would be almost like an extension of having kids. But how is that, I guess, different in the sense of how it's treated, how people look at it, how the law looks at it, and even when you actually go and represent someone compared to like children?
Well, in Pennsylvania, they just passed a law where the courts can consider uh, the welfare of the pet in equitable distribution in property cases. But if it's not a married couple, you wind up having to file a different type of case, which is called a replevin action, to get something back.
Mm.
And, again, I usually encourage people to try to settle it, but it is as emotional for them as people dealing with children, sometimes even more so.
Mhm.
Um, and it's astounding to me that people are willing to go to the wall on that in terms of litigation. I mean, they will spend, tens of thousands of dollars over pet custody that you wouldn't necessarily see in a child custody case.
Mm.
And again, usually the way to go is to try to work it out. I just finished a case where the day we were going into trial, we went back and talked to the judge, and the judge said, well, why don't you just, share the dog equally,
Mhm.
1 week on, 1 week off. And that's what wound up happening.
Mm.
Uh, but and that had been a suggestion early in the case, and the other side wouldn't do it.
Mm.
But so after maybe about 20,000 in legal fees, they decided that was the best outcome. Because the other trick I know with a lot of judges is if they suggest a settlement, if you're the side that doesn't want it and you insist on going to trial, that will sort of be held against you a little bit by the judge. They're saying, okay, I came up with this great idea and you don't want to go along with me.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that gives the judge a negative view of your client. So but that is becoming increasingly common.
Mhm.
I have a lot of people getting in touch with me over trying to get pets back, or trying to, they let somebody have a pet for a few days and then they
Mhm.
just don't want to give it back.
So it's a very emotional thing. And I think, particularly if the parties don't have children and the child, you see things online about people calling them their fur babies, which is true. I have a dog. I love my dog dearly. If something were to happen to my husband and I, the dog spends more time with him, so I wouldn't fight to get the dog. But some people will.
Yeah.
It's more than under law in Pennsylvania. A pet used to be considered no more than like a lamp or any other inanimate object. But they've really become, more aware of the connection that people do have to their pets.
Interesting. It's an interesting evolution.
It is, and it's proceeding all the time. Like I said, this is the first time under Pennsylvania law that it can be considered in a divorce case or in a protection from abuse case. They can consider, okay, because a lot of people would not leave an abusive situation because they were worried about leaving a pet behind.
Interesting. So it really is like a surrogate for children. Like it,
yeah,
wow,
it really is. And I have a case that I just, where my client got the pet, but shortly thereafter, the dog became very sick and died. And we sort of suspected that the ex was poisoning.
Wow.
Because he would come by where she had the dog, and we just think that he threw something in the yard just because. So it's pet custody can be very challenging.
Yeah, I did hear this one story. I don't remember if I saw it online, if I heard it from another lawyer, but he was basically saying that there was one case he was working on, and both sides just did not want to compromise on the pet. And so the judge was very King Solomon-like and said, okay, well, if you can't agree on this, then you have to sell the dog and you'll split the proceeds. And so after he said that, they went outside and they worked out how they can both basically share custody of the dog. So
yeah, I did see a case like that where it was like, well, if you can't agree, we'll sell it,
Yeah.
I don't know whether people would be able to bid on it.
Yeah.
Price, whether the two of them could get into a battle over bidding, but I could see a lot of complications with that. And you have to feel sorry for the pet.
Oh, yeah. Just caught in the middle.
They are attached to their people, and to just the pet has no idea what's going on. And if they're sold suddenly to a third party, is that the right thing to do? It's right in terms of forcing a settlement.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So now, Susan, I guess, what would you say are some common misconceptions you hear from clients? I'm sure you get people coming in and they have certain ideas or certain things that they believe is true when it's really not true. But what would you say are some of the most common misconceptions or myths you hear from your clients?
Well, I think one of the main misconceptions is, again, where they come in and they say, well, my neighbor got this. My neighbor got alimony or support of like $3,000 a month. And you have to say, well, your neighbor's husband is a doctor. Your husband is a plumber. It's not going to be the same, it's not just, you're not going to get what somebody else says you're going to get. And probably the biggest problem is people going to, the Google lawyer to tell people what's going to happen. This is what I should get. And it's like, well, it doesn't always work that way. People come in with a misconception that everything has to be a fight. They come in and they'll come in wanting what other people want them to want. I've had cases where a parent, where you're telling a person, look, this is not worth the legal fees to fight over this particular thing. But then you have a parent who's willing to fund it. And they will say, we want to send a message. We want to fight. And so that's sort of an odd thing. But people come in, and I think people are mostly just afraid. They don't know what their future is going to be. Misconceptions, again, they see television law. everything's over in an hour. Well, it isn't. It's never over in an hour. So a lot of the misconceptions come from friends and relatives and the internet, where they just think that, well, this is what happened and that's what I should get. Again, people are consulting with attorney Google,
Or even AI, I guess.
AI now, and they'll come in and says AI says this, and then you have to explain that AI sometimes tells you what you want to hear. It sometimes hallucinates. I mean, it makes up cases. There have been attorneys who have been disciplined and fined because they submit something to the court that they had AI write, and the case that's cited, it looks good, but it doesn't even exist. But I would say the biggest misconceptions are thinking it will be over quickly when maybe it won't be, thinking it will be easy when maybe it won't be, and sometimes thinking it will be difficult and maybe it won't be. It really depends upon, like I said, the actual assets and liabilities involved, how the children are handling things, and what you think a judge will do with a similar set of circumstances. And again, who's the attorney on the other side? That'll tell you a lot.
So when let's say someone is going through a situation like this and they're looking for a lawyer who can help them, what advice would you give to this person to help them find the right lawyer who has experience, has the knowledge, and can help them navigate this process? Because hopefully it's the first time they're going through it, but it's all, I would also imagine it's pretty stressful, confusing. They don't know what to expect. So what advice would you give this person as they're doing their search to find a lawyer who can help them?
I would say the most important thing is to meet with a number of attorneys, see which ones you click with. Some attorneys, you go in and it's like, I don't think they're really going to represent me. Sometimes some of the bigger firms, and I don't want to bash bigger firms, but you go in and you hire like the top gun at a big firm, and then you find out you're dealing with an associate that's maybe just out of law school and doesn't have the same level of experience. So I would really want to clarify, if you're going to a bigger firm, who's going to be representing me. A lot of times, the big firms, they just pawn you off to associates. I have always deliberately made the choice not to hire an associate. I mean, I don't get all the big deal cases, I guess, but if people come in and hire me, they get me. They're not going to have somebody else that they don't know show up in court. I really try to have a personal sense of my clients. In family law, particularly, things happen at night and on the weekends. So if I'm retained, I give them my cell phone number. They can text me at night. They can get in touch with me pretty much any time. And I think that that's something, I don't know if a lot of attorneys do that or not. I don't know. But I think it's important that I do that. So a lot of it is to see if your personality meshes with the attorney. See if the attorney has the same goals that you have. Mm-hmm. If you go into an attorney and you're not sure what you're going to do, an attorney's telling you have to file for divorce right now, you don't. You have time to think things over. You have time to contemplate, listen to what the advice the attorney gives. But unless it's really an abusive situation, or somebody's running off with a child, or taking the finances, cleaning out bank accounts, generally you have a few minutes to think about it. I always tell people they're not going to take away the right to a divorce next week, next month, next year. So you have to think about it and think about what's in your own best interest. So I don't think a hard sell is a good thing. So if you get an attorney telling you, yes, you've got to do this right now, in rare instances, you don't have to do it. Most of the time you don't. You have time to think about it and evaluate how you think you're going to fit into that attorney's practice. You know, are they available? Are they accessible? That's my own personal philosophy of it. And again, I'm not saying that big firms are bad. I mean, I know they probably make a lot more money than I do, but you know, I like to have a personal relationship with the client. And I know there's a lot of attorneys that do as well. I'm not that special that way, but that's what I would tell people to look for an attorney, is somebody who can have the same goals they have in terms of settling the case or mediating the case, or if you need to litigate the case, then you need somebody who's going to really go in and represent you on that. Somebody who's not afraid to go to court if it's needed.
Okay. And when it comes to the future, we've talked a little bit about this, but I mean, where do you think the future of family law is going? Like any major changes people should really be paying attention to?
Oh gosh. I don't know that there really are any major changes that I see, other than I think that the courts are trying to keep people out of court more. I think that they're trying to, with custody, you know, appoint parental coordinators, parenting coordinators to deal with the children. I think the courts want to keep people out of litigation as much as possible. That's just my view of it, that they don't want to see all these cases in court. You know, the judges want to reserve their time for the more difficult cases, and they try to send people to, you know, hearing officers, lower level judicial officials, and hoping things resolve there. And that's been going on for some time, so I can't say that that's really new. But I think that the courts are looking to just have people stay out of litigation. I don't think most judges love it.
Okay.
Pennsylvania law is, like I said, opening up to pet custody even more than they used to. That's a relatively new change. And the fact that it can be considered in abuse cases was also a very recent change.
Okay. Well, very well said there, Susan. And I have one last question for you. But before I ask it, I do want to point people to your website at smurray-law.com.
Thank you.
Now, last question for you. What does peace of mind mean to you?
Peace of mind to me means that you're able to kind of keep yourself centered. You don't go too far up, you don't go too far down. You know, that you kind of keep everything on an even keel. You realize that you're doing your best every day, particularly in law, to help people, but you can't control all the outside forces. You can't control if somebody's going to do something really stupid and get themselves into trouble, but you can try to help them out of it. But you don't have to be aggravated by everything, or frankly, aggravated by anything. That doesn't help anyone. So peace of mind means, to me, keeping myself centered, I think I'm known for being calm and keeping myself calm in difficult situations, and just don't get too high, don't get too low. Don't feel that any case is the end of the world. You do your best every day and just try to keep things on an even keel.
Okay, well, there you have it. Susan sharing her expertise. So, Susan, if people want to contact you or your practice, what's the best way that they can do that?
Best way is probably through my email, which is smurray@dca.net. That's SMURRAY at D as in dog, C as in cat, A as in alpha.net. That would be the best way at the moment. Call my office. You can always leave a message if someone doesn't pick up the phone. Somebody should generally be picking up the phone. I'm going through a little bit of a transition right now in that the person I shared an office with recently passed away. And so we're getting other people in and new secretarial help within the next few weeks. So, but you know, in the meantime, after the next few weeks, it'll be easy. Call my office right now. send me an email, call my office, leave a message if nobody's picking up the phone. But
Awesome.
the website, I think my website has links to it through Martindale Hubble. So you can contact me through my website as well. Avo is another way to contact me. Avo and Martindale Hubble are also good ways to reach me.
Got it. Well, Susan, this is great. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for sharing your message.
And thank you for having me. I'll look forward.
Thanks for listening to the Verdict Signal podcast. Any questions? Please contact the practice directly with the contact information provided during the show. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.